If you're Jewish, you know that there's this traditional phrase when speaking of those who have died, may his memory be a blessing. But when speaking of the late High Horowitz, there's a lot more going on than just a blessing. Because his memory will continue to serve us in many ways and for many years to come. His memory reminds us to be an educator. His memory reminds us to be a steward of our history, to be a liberator of the oppressed, to be gracious in the face of chronic illness and pain, to leave our planet better than when you found it, not with sweeping grand gestures, but personal acts of kindness, to try your hand at gardening and diplomacy. As a liberator during World War II, High understood his role in history and that he was not permitted to keep his experience in some forgotten scrapbook. Rather, he was compelled to share them with a new generation, both here and abroad, because its searing lessons must speak to us, frankly, for centuries to come. Those of us who became his students were truly touched by this man. We each found a reason to make his memory a blessing. For me, our gathering today is about sustaining his personal mission, one of speaking to that next generation regarding a chapter in history that even today remains inconceivable. The Holocaust, mass murder carried out by a regime in a manner so evil, so calculating, and so sweeping that it remains an indelible stain on humanity. Not just because it happened, but because an indifferent world allowed genocide to occur on its watch. I managed to take that enormous crime and place it in the context of an eyewitness where the rest of us could begin to understand what occurred, and then for us to internalize what it means to us today in the 21st century. And that's why High's contributions were so vital, and remain so, and why, frankly, this institution is so important. I connected with people in a personal yet very profound manner. Perhaps it was that friendly grandfather persona he had that cloaked a very driven personality to impart the story of genocide. He knew that when his generation is finally claimed by age and illness, the Holocaust could be reduced to a little more than 9 minutes of class time and textbook photos carefully selected so we don't want to offend sensibility too much. And frankly, that's already happening. So High became a sentinel, guarding the truth against the deniers. High became a diplomat, receiving awards from the French in recognition of his efforts. High became a media celebrity because he not only had a compelling story to tell, but a compelling means of telling it. High became an historian, an educator, an advocate. High also became a friend because with that personality, how could he be anything but a family member? So several years ago, I was fortunate enough to partner with some philanthropists who understood the power of a Sherman tank as a symbol of courage and valor, the type of tank that High crewed during his grand tour of Europe. So we brought a Sherman back from Europe and built an entire museum around it. It's now filled with 30 World War II operational vehicles. By the way, some of which are street legal, and if you want to get a really good idea what it's like to be pulled over by multiple police officers driving an M8 Greyhound tank, feel free to talk to them. So when we dedicated the tank to the public, we knew it had to be presented in a manner that honored the men who fought and died in these vehicles and those who used them to liberate a continent. The 33-ton icon that we brought over from Europe had High's name written all over it. And it gave us some wonderful images of High, including the one that you see on that program distributed this afternoon. So there are these amazing photos of him walking around that vehicle with his great-grandchildren. He spoke of its crew positions, its strengths, and its weaknesses, and goodness knows the Sherman has a lot of weaknesses. But they were overcome by the personal bravery of the men who climbed into them. Kids they were. Boys from Tennessee and Chicago and Brooklyn and Queens, thrown together in a tank where they shared their fate to teamwork and luck. And there was High, explaining it all to the kids. And I couldn't help but think that this shared experience had to change forever how they would look at this elderly man who actually never stopped being a GI. High will continue to speak to us because what he had to say remains as powerful as any tank he ever crewed. Despite what he endured and what he witnessed, his decency never failed him. And that is what made him such an outstanding steward of our nation's heritage, and based on the videotapes we still have of him, he remains that steward. Over the years, liberators and the liberated have been brought together here for a single purpose. I'd like to think to restore our faith in mankind. As we close it on Veterans Day, we have a solemn obligation to acknowledge the role of men and women who have served, and who continue to serve in defense of our nation, in defense of humanity, and in defense of civilization that has far too often come to the brink of an abyss. Let us ensure that when we speak of all liberators, now and forever, that their memory is a blessing.